From the gloomy days of rampant gang violence and narcotics abundance to controversial yet effective measures, El Salvador has drastically gone from the most dangerous narco country to the safest one. And today, we'll be looking at what the country used to be, attempted measures established in the past, and the steps that led to this remarkable change. Bound by the chains of crime. For years, El Salvador was known as one of the most violent countries in the world due to rampant gang activity. Predominantly run by the MS-13 gang, the country wasn't a favorable place for citizens, with civilians losing friends and family to gang activity and drug use. Initially formed to protect Salvadoran immigrants from other gangs in the US, MS-13 evolved into a more traditional criminal organization over time. The home country of this gang felt the terror they had created overseas when many of the gang members were deported to El Salvador following the end of the Salvadoran Civil War in 1992. This mass deportation caused a widespread spread of the gang through the country and other regions in Central America. The death toll in the country increased, and the violence was also highly rampant. A 2013 study revealed that more than half of those killed between 2009 and 2012 were between the ages of 15 and 34, out of which around 80% of the victims were male. 70% of the killings were carried out with firearms, and nearly 40% of these murders happened in public spaces. However, by this time, there was a debate to determine if these murders were actually directly linked to gang violence. But this became very clear after some negotiations with the gangs resulted in a 40% drop in the homicide rate. It then became clear to everyone that the gang leaders had enough control over their local factions to significantly reduce violence across the country. Sudden disappearances of people also became a thing, with the prosecutor's office receiving reports of 23,000 disappearances and the police recording 11,252 cases between 2010 to 2016. In 2015, the situation reached a critical point, with a staggering 103 homicides per 100,000 people. That's 6,650 lives lost in just 1 year, making it the most dangerous country in the Western Hemisphere. Governmental efforts. The people were groaning, and the government decided that it was time to make an effort to put a stop to this. Therefore, when FMLN candidate Mauricio Funes won the presidential election in 2009, he launched both preventative and repressive anti-crime initiatives. His administration introduced the first national violence prevention strategies aimed at reducing the impact of criminal activity. However, these strategies were more of a white elephant project and didn't yield any significant results. Funes's government didn't want to give up. Hence, it intensified joint police and military operations and, in September 2010, passed the gang proscription law. However, in spite of this, the violence escalated, with 4,354 murders recorded in 2011. Hence, they decided to change their approach and started initiating indirect talks with gang leaders to reduce killings in exchange for improved conditions in prisons. In this gang truce, the government agreed to move the incarcerated gang members to less restrictive prisons in exchange for less violence and killings. Their efforts yielded success finally, and there was a 40% decrease in homicide happening within the country. Despite some early success, the truce ultimately unraveled due to a lack of widespread public and political support. The two main political parties distanced themselves from this truce, and many Salvadorans weren't satisfied with it either. Even President Funes never publicly acknowledged the truce as official state policy. The truce began to fall apart, plus personnel leading the agreement were removed from power, and by the end of 2013, the truce fully fell apart. Without the existence of this truce, the homicide rate surged once again, and gang activities such as extortion and recruitment, which had remained relatively stable during the truce, began to rise sharply. By 2014, Sanchez Seren, also from the FMLN, came into power, but his tenure quickly became associated with worsening security conditions. Early in 2015, his administration responded by deploying joint military and police rapid reaction forces, and in March 2016, introduced extraordinary measures to combat gang violence. However, without substantial results, they intensified their efforts to cripple gang finances with operations like Operation Jacques in July and Operación Tacana in September of 2017. A Safe El Salvador plan, which required a $200 million funding per year, was established, and though it worked for a while, it was predicted to fail in 2017 as it was seen as not sustainable. And this was exactly what happened. The homicide rate dropped by 20% from 2015 to 2016, which was not really felt by the public. And in the second half of 2017, there was a resurgence in killings, with 887 murders reported between September and October. The government wasn't the only one combating gang violence, though, as the public was also tired of the issue. Hence, the awakening of vigilantes. These vigilantes took laws into their own hands and targeted gang members who proved to be a threat to the people living within the community. These vigilantes also included war veterans, and though the government was aware of their existence, they didn't oppose them, as some members of the government, like Guillermo Gallegos, the president of the Legislative Assembly, openly praised them for protecting their families. The turning point. Change came on June 1, 2019, when El Salvador's youngest president was sworn in. Nayib Bukele wasn't even in the two main parties that dominated the country for the past 3 decades. He was a fresh choice, and his tenure marked significant developments. On January 25, 2021, El Salvador officially became the first Central American country to be certified by the WHO for eliminating malaria. Then in 2022, Bukele's government launched a massive crackdown on criminal gangs. A state of emergency was declared on March 27th and extended on July 20th. This led to the arrest of over 53,000 suspected gang members, giving El Salvador the highest reported incarceration rate in the world. This aggressive crackdown included military operations characterized by both efficiency and brutality, and has significantly impacted the gangs that once paralyzed the country. While the exact number of gang members killed during these operations remains unclear, estimates suggest that thousands may have died. The surviving gang members who surrendered were quickly transferred to a newly constructed supermax prison designed to accommodate tens of thousands of inmates. In January 2024, it was reported that the homicide rate had dropped nearly 70% year over year, with 154 homicides in 2023 compared to 495 in 2022. Controversial strategies. However, the gangs didn't want to go down without a fight. The Salvadoran gang crackdown began in March 2022, triggered by a sudden spike in violence between March 25th and 27th, during which 87 people were killed. For context, only 79 people were murdered during the entire month of February. The government attributed the surge in murders to criminal gangs, mainly the MS-13 gang, prompting the legislature to approve a state of emergency. Therefore, this emergency declaration suspended rights such as association and legal counsel, extended detention periods without charges, and granted law enforcement expanded powers. By July 2024, the crackdown had led to the arrest of 81,110 individuals accused of gang affiliations, severely overcrowding El Salvador's prisons and giving the country the highest incarceration rate in the world by 2023. As of May 16, 2023, around 5,000 of those arrested had been released. The Salvadoran justice system handed down severe sentences to members of the MS-13 gang. One gang member was sentenced to an unprecedented 460 years in prison for aggravated extortion. Another member received a 360-year sentence, while 6 other gang members were given prison terms ranging from 60 to 20 years. In January 2023, Minister of Defense Rene Moreno Monroy reported that homicides had decreased by 56.8%, with 496 murders recorded in 2022 compared to 1,147 in 2021. He credited this significant drop in violence to the government's aggressive crackdown on gangs. That same month, the government opened up the Terrorism Confinement Center, CECOT, a massive prison facility designed to hold up to 40,000 inmates. Bukele instituted strict lockdowns across all prisons, confining inmates to their cells 24 hours a day and mixing rival gang members together in shared cells. The government released photos showing inmates packed tightly on prison floors, not only to prove to the public that an era of peace was being established, but also to show the gang members still walking free that there was no escape for them. The crackdown intensifies. The state of exception, which was approved in 2022 in response to the escalating violence, was initially set to last 30 days, but this emergency order has since been extended 14 times. The state of exception suspended rights such as association and legal counsel, extended the detention period without charges from 3 to 15 days, and allowed the government to monitor citizens' communications without warrants. The government also restricted judges' ability to offer alternatives to pretrial detention, such as bail or house arrest. They passed stricter laws to increase prison sentences for convicted gang leaders to 40 to 45 years, up from 6 to 9 years, and for other gang members to 20 to 30 years, up from 3 to 5 years. To smoke out younger gang members, they lowered the age of criminal responsibility from 16 to 12 years old. To ensure that anything related to gang violence is eliminated from the country, a new law was passed threatening anyone who reproduces or disseminates gang-related messages, including journalists, with 10 to 15 years in prison. In tandem with these legislative measures, the government deployed additional police and military forces to raid homes and set up checkpoints in neighborhoods known for gang activity. Soldiers checked identification cards and proof of address, searched vehicles and backpacks, and restricted movement in and out of these areas. Anyone deemed suspicious was subjected to further scrutiny, including being forced to strip so soldiers could check for gang-related tattoos. As the number of inmates increased, many families struggled to find out where or why their relatives were being held. Prison conditions worsened, with rations reduced to 2 daily meals of beans and tortillas, a measure Bukele justified by stating he would not take budget away from schools to feed these terrorists. Prisoners were also denied mattresses and subjected to harsh treatment, with all gang members ordered to be confined to their cells 24/7. On November 3, 2022, Osiris Luna Meza, the Minister of Justice, announced that the government would start destroying the gravestones of gang members to prevent them from becoming shrines. He stated, "Terrorists will no longer be able to glorify the memory of dead criminals." Despite this, the government assured that the bodies would remain intact and not be disturbed. Bukele likened the removal of these gravestones to the denazification efforts in Allied-occupied Germany and compared the gangs to the Nazis, and further clarified that the policy specifically targets gravestones that reference gang affiliations. On December 3, 2022, the government initiated a siege of Soyapango, deploying 10,000 soldiers to surround the city and arrest gang members. During the siege, the government also removed gang graffiti from the city. Reactions. Domestically, the crackdown has garnered significant support. A poll revealed that 91% of Salvadorans backed the government's actions, with 78% expressing strong support. Many Salvadorans, including those living in the United States, welcomed the crackdown due to their fatigue with rampant violence. Residents of El Salvador now perceive their neighborhoods as much safer, enjoying the freedoms they previously considered unthinkable. However, concerns persist about the impact on innocent individuals. Some families of those arrested during the crackdown have claimed their loved ones were detained based on insufficient evidence. In response, a group called Victims of the Regime Movement was established to advocate for these individuals. However, President Bukele maintained that only 1% of arrests might be incorrect, and Defense Minister René Moreno Monroy has assured the public that individuals found to have no gang affiliations would be released, stating, "The people need to know that if they're not involved in anything bad, nothing bad will happen to them." Some world leaders have also expressed their satisfaction with the measure, with some leaders like Honduran President Xiomara Castro and Argentina Security Minister Patricia Bullrich trying to emulate this in their country as well. This heavy-handed approach has drawn significant criticism. Numerous press organizations, NGOs, the UN, and other human rights groups have condemned the Bukele administration's tactics. Despite this, the Salvadoran government has largely dismissed these concerns, viewing them as distractions from its broader goals. Balancing a firm stance on crime with the protection of personal liberties is a significant challenge. The government's goal is to ensure that citizens feel safe, while also fostering a conducive environment for both domestic and foreign investments. NGOs have raised concerns about potential dictatorial tendencies, fearing that the consolidation of power could lead to broader restrictions on freedoms. In this context, President Bukele has sought to leverage partnerships, notably with China, to support his administration's efforts. The Salvadoran government is in the process of ordering thousands of facial recognition cameras from China to be installed throughout the country. While some view this move as a potential step toward authoritarian control, others argue that it is a necessary measure to ensure long-term safety and stability, providing El Salvador with the opportunity to prosper. Now on his second term, which he won by a landslide, Bukele is ready to ensure this peace era continues. What do you think of these drastic measures? Let us know below, and be sure to subscribe for more dark content from around the globe.